Hey, everybody. Before I start this week's episode, I just want to talk to you about Elias Software. Elias Software is providing high-quality tools and services, bridging the gaps between game developers, sound designers, and music composers. With a modern and fast workflow and deep game engine integration, Elias audio tools enable unprecedented creative control. If you're looking for real-time audio feedback for music and sound effects for your game, you want to check eliassoftware.com and get on with what's hot right now. Game Dev Unchained is back at it again with your favorite host, Brandon Pham. I said that already. With our unofficial second host, Ray Graham. How you doing, Ray? How you doing out there?
What's up, man? I'm doing good. I'm hanging out.
All right. So if you haven't read the title, this is a Roundtable news episode where once a month I get together with my good friend over here and kind of giggle about the game industry, on how well it's doing, how badly it's doing, the good and bad of it all. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Well, before we do, I always like to update with you. It's becoming kind of routine now. How are you doing over there? Is everything we gotten through the Blade Runner fires? We're still trucking along with the pandemic. How are things?
It's funny, the Blade. That's only one day. It was only one day of like the orange Mars looking smoke outside. But no, yeah, I'm hanging in. I'm doing fine, hanging in there. Yeah, it's getting old at this point, but we are still here and we're still trucking along and we still have jobs. So that's I think that's good.
Yeah, that's definitely from a privileged perspective over there. In the Bay Area, a tech job, it's definitely safer than most of the world that's going through. Do you have any crazy upside hopes before this year ends? Do you feel like it's going to be more of the same? No crazy vaccine? Are you in any of that camp?
There's some news about a vaccine that they had to pause some trials because somebody got sick who was part of the trials. That was on the news today. But yeah, I don't really expect anything to happen until next year, honestly.
Yeah, it sucks, man. Well, always the bringer of bad news. Without further ado, still playing. Still looks good.
Fancy transitions, yo.
Well, it's around that time of the year. Crazy enough, haven't heard too many crunch stories. Maybe it's just well hidden. People are just so worried about just keeping jobs. But CD Red, especially CD Projekt Red, last year were confident in saying that they weren't going to crunch and they weren't going to do any of that shenanigan, and they're changing the error of their ways. Almost to exactly a year later, around crunch time, when usually a AAA project does crunch, they completely forgotten what they just said. So there's so many ways to look at this. Of course, they were battling bad press at the time. And they're trying to kind of eliminate a lot of what they're saying by saying that they're paying for overtime, right? And Jason Schreier, the guy who's always breaking balls in the industry, pretty much said, no, that's not true. These guys were not talked to. They weren't given the respect, the time of day that they're sharing these news in the public. And pretty much are just crunching like any other game studio madly till this ships to a game that you yourself are looking forward to. So as a fan of this game, what do you say about all this, man?
I mean, how many how many 6 to 8 weeks have you pulled, Brandon, in your career?
After a certain point, I stopped. Yeah.
No, not even like,
Yeah.
I think the last time I was crunching like that, I actually pulled it back to 6 to 8 weeks because they were actually talking about doing 7-day weeks.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I need at least one day
to breathe,
that I'm not working, to chill and relax before I start working again. And I seem to remember that you were working with me on that project. So now people could put 1 and 2 together and figure out which one it is. But yeah, that's pretty much the last time I was crunching pretty crazy, and it happens, like sometimes things are not planned well, or the things come up and you need that final push, right? And it happens. And it sucks that, they did say, oh yeah, we're not going to crunch. The CD Projekt Red is actually known for that and known for some bad practices from the Witcher 3 game.
Yeah.
And so they try to say they're going to do something different this time around, but they're making very big and complex games. It was getting down to the wire. Game has already been delayed. COVID is on top of that. So I imagine there was a lot of stress, and I can't, as much as I don't want crunch to happen and we need to do something about it. I don't want to single out CD Projekt Red because it happens everywhere. It happens all over the industry. Do you think right now all the games are coming out on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5? Do you think those devs are just at home chilling right now, enjoying?
Yeah,
a nice cold drink.
That's important note to say, man. Like, I think there's a lot of red herring going on where the industry is like suspiciously really quiet on layoffs and crunch. And I think directly we know that our friends are crunching and very scared about layoffs because this year has not been very good for them.
I think this year's been great for video games.
It's been great for video. I think we kind of talked about this before. It's great for video games that have been out, but games that were supposed to be out later this year have, I don't know, man. A good percentage of the people I talked to have been delaying vertical slices, milestones, way more than like everything's fine. We're right on track. And again, this makes sense with the amount of parents who are teachers at the same time and people who aren't used to working from home suddenly having to set up a home office in their bathroom, right? Because they never really suddenly they have to upgrade their like 8-year-old computer, which was bizarre to me to kind of hear. Like there seems to be more people with like crappy computers who are professional game devs like ourselves that are just having shitty computers. Didn't know that, but that seems to be mostly the case. And all that kind of is piling up. And in more cases than not, game developers are having a lot of problems just hitting deadlines and milestones. And in result, a lot of games are being pushed back. I do want you to help me settle with this debate. Like I've always there was a certain time in a period where, like I mentioned before, where I said, no more crunching. And that's it. Right. And we're pretty much safely respected in that way. And never really been like wagged down with the finger from management saying that you got to do what we say. Right. Is that true? Do you feel overall, or do you feel people really don't have a choice in having to stay overtime? And like, if for some reason they do their work in that allotted 40-hour week, do you feel like these developers have a choice in saying no or yes anymore? Or is it just, I was in a small percentage here?
I mean, I think you always have a choice. And I think in California, especially, like, I think you always have a choice. But there's also a lot of external factors like, oh, I feel like I'm letting the team down, or everybody else is working hard. Why am I going home right now? Am I not a part of the team? Right. So there's a lot of external forces that make you say, what more can you be doing?
Yeah, I don't
in order
that
to
guilt,
get this
man.
game?
I just watched that guilt with a cold shower, dude. and a nice hot dinner by 6 o'clock. It doesn't hurt me anymore. Like, I know there's always the wandering guilt eyes, right? That people give you when you walk out at 6 p.m. like at a regular time.
Yeah.
At a certain point in my career, I just stopped. Didn't worry me. I was like, I'll see you tomorrow, man. Should have got your work done. See you.
but it's that, right? Like, and I think there's a difference between crunching, where somebody comes and tells you, "Oh, hey, we're doing 6-day weeks, or 7-day weeks, 4 months," and you saying, "What more can I shove into this game to make this game awesome?" You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that those are different. And they should be considered different. I personally believe in. I don't believe, even if what more can I shove into this game? You're probably also shoving in more bugs.
Yeah,
you're probably also hurting your health. Like, even though your game may be awesome, like you are doing damage to yourself and to your life, and so maybe that's not the right thing. But I do think that's a personal decision that you're making, right? Versus management telling you, "Hey, it's time to do 6-day weeks." Right.
Yeah. Well, so let's go over the facts with CD Projekt Red in particular, right? So the company, a way to kind of fight back a lot of this bad press again, because they went back on their word. They announced that they would be giving 10% of revenues to employees as extra crunch bonuses, right? That kind of got torn apart shortly after. We were going through a lot of these tweets from developers, but also a lot from Jason Schreier talking to these guys privately, of course. A quote such as, "Last week's were our final sprint." And this is kind of like the public facing version of this. And this is when they said, "Hey, as part of these hard decisions, we're going to be in recent years giving 10% of annual profit as our company generates in 2022 will be split directly to the team." And then Jason Schreier replied directly, "Last year, the bosses of the project approached me for an interview. They wanted to announce to Cyberpunk 27 they would be avoiding mandatory crunch. This week, they sent out an email to staff announcing Studio 1 mandatory crunch." Okay, so that's the beginning of that story, right? But when we go into the tweets, and it's all super crazy. I didn't read every single one of this long ass thread, man, but this is where Twitter is so effective in having conversations with people. But it got into the nitty gritty of things, and in some cases, like, he was talking to a lot of anonymous people. They were looking at 12 to 15-hour days, 5 days a week. Sometimes Saturdays are mandatory. But on these days, I'm pissed off about. I have to remember I'm the one who asked them for a job plus the money. Some people are kind of like defending CD Projekt Red, which is the cases here.
I think also I think when you've crunched in the past at some places, you do get compensated sometimes, not just through bonuses. Like, here's the thing: we know that Cyberpunk is going to make some money, so if they're going to give folks 10% profit and share that amongst the team, hey, that might be worth it. All the work that you did over these years, maybe. Right. Yeah. I don't see that game not selling, right? But then in other situations, sometimes, the game ships, goes gold, and you're gone for a month, or you're gone for a couple of weeks, to make up for all the extra time that you put in. Of course, it doesn't really make up for it, but it kind of offsets some of that damage, right? When you can be like, okay, I'm working, but I'm away from work for a month. Like, let me just chill out and relax now.
Let me tear off your arm and give you some of it back. The same argument can be said about that.
I mean, if we're talking profit share on Cyberpunk 2077, like, I don't think any of those devs are going to be crying about it.
I think it's one of those things where
come bonus time, they're not going to cry about it.
Yeah, but look at the incentive though. Like, when you set an incentive like that, it's a one and done type of thing. Of course, people in that area probably don't have a lot of studio choices to go to besides CD Projekt Red. They're very popular in that region, right? And probably the only one that has that amount of flexing that they can do, right? And command over developers nearby. But like, you're essentially setting up an incentive to stay just long enough. In my personal story, right? You know, I've worked on big franchises with mega game of, you know, top selling game of the year, right? And it's supposed to be these life-changing moments. But even with that, it's more like, hey, I'm just going to do one more and I'm out. It like precedes an exit plan. No one wants to keep doing this over and over, right? It's a lot of the reasons why even Naughty Dog pump out these masterpieces. These games are epic and they know it's going to be of quality when it is out, but those crunch time just churns people out to a point where 1 or 2 games and you're done. So it's the old factory logic where like you squeeze the juice out of someone's talent just enough and you recycle younger talent into its place, right? And it never seems to be like a long-term deal with talent, right? And I think it's one of those like it's hard to kind of see the big picture, right? A lot of these developers, they look at 1 to 2 projects and then they don't look past that, right? And they don't really pay attention to the older talent that's making an exit. And so I feel in the long term for a company, the quality of games can go down, right? So CD Projekt, of course, we know that 27/7 is probably going to be a good game. Everyone's looking forward to it. And it's hard to make that other side of the argument because games like them, like Rockstar, like Naughty Dog, seems to be continuously pumping out these games with completely new teams at some point, right? So I'm throwing this question over to you, is like, will that formula never stop working to the point where they take a pause? Because it is kind of, in a way, seems to be working for them, where they're taking that chance and opportunity for new talent to be cheaper and more refreshed to take on the next challenge. What do you think?
Yeah, like I don't know. I don't know. Is that what they're doing? I have no idea.
Right? Just talk to any Rockstar people, man. It feels like not a lot of people stay past 2 games at most, right? Or 3.
Yeah, but I think that only works as long as you continue to make games that everybody wants to work on.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're making these big titles that everybody wants to work on, and so you can continue to churn through people because you're like, hey, we know that if we churn through these people, there's like people in line that would just die for the opportunity to work for us. You know, yeah. I think you can say that about Naughty Dog. You can say that about Rockstar. You could probably say that about CD Projekt Red, where they know, I'm going to work on this game, and that this game is going to be the game that will suck all the oxygen out of the room whenever it releases. Yeah. And I could say that, hey, it's on my resume. I worked on it. Mm-hmm. And then your resume looks great now because you have 1 of those or 2 of those games under your belt, right? I think it's a huge advantage for a game developer to say, hey, I worked on a Rockstar game or I worked on a Naughty Dog game. You can work anywhere else after that. Yeah. Like you will get a job anywhere else after that. So it's good for them. And the company is always going to make these. But it's kind of weird now because the company's in that position now where it has enough money to take as much time as it needs to make a game that will sell and succeed. Mm-hmm. Right. And through that, they also churn through talent and jam even more in than what the team sizes can do. But yeah, they still end up being successful. And then they also have all the money behind them for the marketing, because the marketing is a big part of it too, right? And so now, and then when they were game releases, that's the only game you're ever going to hear about during that time. And so now you get more sales that way too. Like the game would have to be a real big flop for it not to sell. You know what I mean? Because people are going to pre-order and be ready and be lined up for it. So it works. Like, but I don't know if it's a purposeful thing, but I just think that's just how it works, because of the pedigree of those games.
So do you think there's ever going to be a change in that? And is this just how our industry is going to continuously to work? Because it seems to be no one's challenging it. Like even Jason Schreier and all these people are always pissed. And then when the game comes out, everyone forgets about it and just say Game of the Year stuff. And
Jason's the same website that Jason works for will cover that game.
Yeah, celebrate it. Podcasts.
Well, they'll celebrate. They'll have a podcast, but they'll also have some articles that will talk about crunch.
What's wrong with it,
and what's wrong with it. But it will be overshadowed by the countless articles they're going to write about how good the game is, right?
Yeah.
Or not even how good it is, but every aspect of the game. And they're going to break it down and talk about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And that's all you're ever going to hear about. They're going to be the same. That's the exact same website that will do that. So why they have to do that? Because they have to get people to click on their articles. And they gotta get the money. So that's exactly why they're gonna do that, right? And
I'll explain my struggle recently. I finally am like digging back in my Steam library and playing through it, right? So I popped open finally Red Dead 2. Haven't played it, right? Just been Google. Yeah, I'm way back. And like the internal struggle of a game developer and a gamer, I was like, wow. I don't see how they could have made this game without crunching. You know what I mean? This is no way. Yeah. Like it took them 8 years to make this masterpiece of a game, right? Yeah. And I'm like, it would have taken them like pretty much like a full 12-year cycle or more at normal time. Yeah.
The crazy thing about that is that I hear about their tooling and the process of building the game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, that sounds miserable. Like the tools are bad.
Oh, like the actual engine and editor and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. The tools are bad.
I can't even imagine that. Yeah.
And then the result that you see is like so amazing. And you're just like, wow, those guys were like suffering for years.
And that's another thing, man. That's crazy too. Like you would like an open world game. So I made a lot of single player games with bad tools and it feels like it takes forever. An open world game like Red Dead 2 with bad tools, like it would have saved them years. Just those like itty bitty programs opening up all the time, every day.
I would believe so. Right. But then they can't it's the same thing I was talking about before. It's like they're still successful. They still make a whole bunch of money. Yeah. The game probably took 2 years longer than it really should have if it had really nice streamlined tools that were built for iteration and artist iteration. But who cares if the end result is the end result, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I marvel at, because I worked on teams with bad tools, and then people are just like, "Oh, these tools are bad. Like, I don't want to iterate. I don't want to do this."
Yeah.
And then you look at Red Dead Redemption. There's clearly really, really well polished.
Yeah, super well.
But then you hear the stories of how bad the tools are. You're like, "Oh man,
how bad the tools were, how bad people were treated, how much people burn out from the cycle, and and that's why, man. That's why they were just. It seems like the industry will always have this problem. Mm-hmm. Jason Schreier will always be employed writing these like expose articles. It hasn't really changed. Like even with the uproar, I mean, I would say this: like last 2-3 years is definitely a lot more articles. I think there's a lot more knowledge about crunching in our industry with regular gamers. There seems to be a lot more coverage about this. Yeah, but in terms of change, like I mean, I think people are more careful about how they talk about it in public, but internally, they're still doing things like, I'm just reading this thread. It's like people are, they're still doing 6 days a week. It's pulling, and they're going to keep doing what they need to do to finish the game. Like it's not changing anything, but them being scared of bad press. I mean, there's really nothing internal. And until they start caring about what the real reason is for developers' health and benefits, right? It really doesn't matter if, they're addressing it for other reasons because it's only temporary.
Right.
But I'm always struggling with this because it's hard, because it's an entertainment creative endeavor. It's always going to have last minute changes. The deadline will always stay the same. And it's part of creative human nature to always try to squeeze whatever you can to the last minute, right? So even if they had these great tools at Red Dead, they would have try to make up that time with other things that they kind of left on the cutting floor, right? People have to imagine
they'll put more things in for sure.
Yeah. People have to think about, like, of all the things they put in Red Dead, there's so much more they didn't put in because of time or quality or polish, right? They just had to go with what was there. I don't know, man. It just seems like it's just a definite, man. If you're in the industry, you're just gonna have to crunch. No one's gonna be there to protect you except for yourself if you're like really super senior.
I think that's what it comes down to. You have to protect yourself. I think, like I said, I think there's a difference. If somebody's telling you you have to stay here and work, or we're going to do mandatory 6 day weeks and you don't show up, you only show up 5 day weeks, and then people all give you side eye and you're getting a talking to about it. I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Right. But if it's like, oh no, we're all in this together and I'm going to do extra work because I want X feature to get in the game because it's going to make the game awesome, I can't stop you from making that choice for yourself. Right. Yeah. And then there's the gray area in between where it's like, I'm going to do that because I feel that is what is expected of me.
Yeah.
And it's that
it sucks. Yeah.
I think it's hard. Right. And especially, and then you're working at a company where it has a legacy of making great games. Like, you have to live up to that legacy. So that's extra pressure on you. Right. I think it's possible to make games that great without crunching and without doing all this and properly planning it out. They exist. They're out there. They've actually been made. I
know they exist. I know indie level maybe, but like,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of AAA big project that hasn't been.
And we know that.
Yeah.
And we know that working those crazy hours is not good for you. It's not really good for your productivity. It's not really good for the game.
Not good for your family or all that stuff.
Yeah. But we know that there's studies on that. It doesn't make you more productive. Like, if you have more rest, you'd be more productive, but the game will just take longer and cost more.
Yeah.
And it's that choice you have to make, right?
It's the hidden agenda that kills you as a developer, right? I mean, I'm probably always gonna be like, if I don't want to crunch, I won't crunch. And there's really nothing on management that can do legally, right? If you're in like a comfortable country like the USA, I don't know how Poland is. It's I think it's like, fuck you, but like,
no, it's actually not true, right? Like in California, it's employment at will.
Yeah.
Right. So they can fire you for any reason.
Sure. It's a bad look, though. I don't think.
Right. So
it's very hard to like force someone to crunch. They say no. They're going to have to find other ways to get you. And I think it's the other ways that kind of swipe at you that is a thing of concern. Right. So even if you like, stand up for yourself and say, hey, I'm not crunching. I'll be here tomorrow. I'll see you. Yeah, first, and maybe for the remainder of the game development of that project, you'll be fine. But they're going to try to swipe you through yearly reviews, right? Saying that you're not a team player. They ding you on salary increases. They ding you on bonuses. They do whatever they can.
Yeah, they may like still pay you and give you a raise and all that, but you best believe whatever discretionary bonus you're going to get for that game you worked on.
Oh yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, you're not getting a big piece, right?
That's promotional opportunities that your peers are going to get a better chance than you. So these are ways that like management trying to get at you if you kind of push back, and it's very much hidden agenda stuff. Yeah.
I'll tell a story about what happened to me one time. And this is at I won't mention the company or the people or anything like that.
It's just between me and you, man. It's fine.
I'll let you figure that out.
I'll figure it out. All right, everyone, pull on Ray's resume, LinkedIn right now, and we'll go through it together. We'll figure it out.
No, but I was, working on a team. We're trying to figure out the discretionary bonus for the team.
Oh shit, you're part of that too? See, I've never been at that echelon level where you get to decide as a lead where the piece of pie goes. Okay. Give me some glimpse here.
I was trying to get my team a lot of the pie because I'm like, we're on schedule, we're on track. everything's getting done.
We're engineers.
We're good. We're good. So we should be getting hooked up.
Yeah.
And Ezra got back, was like, oh, well, no, your team doesn't really crunch. Your team's not here on the weekends. There's other teams here that are always here on the weekends and stuff. And I was like, yeah, because we're on time.
We're on top. See, that's the biggest thing, right? Man. Yeah.
And then I was like, so how do you reward that? And then the answer was, which I thought was hilarious, was we reward that because you get to go home. That's your reward. You get to go home and spend time with your family. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's messed up. But right? And
that's the attitude.
Right? Yeah. Right? That's the attitude, right? Like, you're gonna leave home. Okay, so you don't need this bonus money. The people that hear all the time need that bonus money because they need to be rewarded for the time they put in, even though maybe the time they're putting in is because they didn't plan, didn't execute, or are not on top of it. Right? Like, maybe if that's the reason why do you reward that?
Why do you reward last place? It's what I see. That's essentially it. Yeah.
That kind of stuck with me because I'm like, okay, so doing a good job is not really being rewarded.
Yeah, doing your work on time. No, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
you didn't put the extra. You just confirmed 99% of the grunts out there, their suspicion of how the system works. You just completely unveiled.
I mean, this is just one anecdotal.
Sure, story. But that's the feeling. Yeah. As a grunt myself, I've been in those positions where you can see how they are overly complimentary of people who are staying later. And this is the effed up thing about this whole mentality of staying later is better, right? I was at a place where I'm always an early bird. I come in at 7, even earlier if they let me, and try to finish out by 4 or 5 if they let me. Do my 8 hours in or 9 even. Try not to leave before 5 if I have to. Get my shit done and I'm out, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, the guy who comes in at 12 p.m. and stays at 8 looks like the harder worker, therefore is rewarded, right?
Because nobody, it's a game dev studio. Ain't nobody there at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Ain't nobody there that early. But just that look, the appearances of staying late. And it's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just from college years, whatever that mentality is from, it kind of stuck with the game industry and always has been and always will be, where if you're out before the sun is down, somehow you're a bad worker. Somehow you're not a team player, no matter how good you are.
Man, if it was summertime, that's a long time. You're waiting for the sun to go down. But still.
Yeah, exactly, right. So I've tested this theory, man. I'm done the reverse. I've showed up later, I stayed later, and in some cases, less than 8 hours. But I'm out at 7 p.m. and suddenly, wow, that Brandon guy is really pushing it hard this week, man. You see how he's out there, he's crunching. Therefore, he gets. It's such a backward way of rewarding people. And just what you said, man, it's like I'm getting my stuff on time. And I think I've talked to Rountable a bunch of times about this, where he's like, well, the guy who's staying late means he's not efficient. I mean, that's the only reason why he's late. And the reason why
he could also be poorly managed. He could be also overworked.
Poorly managed, sure. But there's inefficiency in that methodology right there. But somehow that in game industry is just so highly rewarded. And again, that lifestyle is kind of more towards single people, right? Towards younger people. It's a demographic that's carved out to work like that. And that's why we want to recycle the old all the time and bring in the new. And I don't think that's going to change. The games are getting bigger next gen. I don't know if you've seen all the consoles. It's going to require bigger teams, more resources. Expectation, I would say, is 5x. In terms of quality.
Or here's the thing is, if game dev companies are smart, it's really yes, the demands are getting higher. The asset, demand on asset and content is getting higher and higher and higher. You need to figure out a way to generate that content cheaply.
Yeah.
And I don't mean outsourcing. I mean like procedural tools, better tooling, better iteration, so that you can generate a ton of stuff really quickly. And then when you want to handcraft and make something great, you just focus on that one little thing. But then you have all this other content that is just generated procedurally, and really put effort and behind that, Yeah. And some companies are doing that. Some companies are really thinking about that, like whatchamacallit, Ubi, with like, I'm sure they're doing some procedural things with the
with their open worlds. Yeah, they probably are figuring. Procedural generation has been like a huge buzzword, especially from the environment art field. Like people's like, I feel like 2 to 3 companies in the last 5 years that I've been at, first thing that pops up in our first meeting is like, all right, how do we procedurally generate environments at will, where level designers can just put it together like Lego blocks? It's like, hold on, man. You can't just do
the way
whatever.
It gets a bad rap, right? But there's different levels of that.
There's different levels of doing it, but it requires like a freaking GTA studio that's done open world correctly before to take that extra step to find the shortcuts. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a missing step in between that understands the pipeline of how that works.
I'll definitely say Horizon Zero Dawn did a good example of this, where I don't know if you've seen the GDC presentation where they talked about their vegetation on the terrain, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You look at that game, the vegetation is very varied and there's a lot of cool stuff, right? Do you think an artist went in there and hand placed every tree? Hell no. Like they just say, in this area, I want this type of tree at this kind of density. Like, show me what that looks like. And they relinquish some of the artistic control. And then the computer generates what the thing is supposed to look like, because there's no way you can generate all of that data by hand. It's just impossible, right?
Yeah, but that's too much, right? That's what I'm saying. That's a seasoned developer.
That was definitely the first time they did a game of that size, right?
That's the size. Yeah, I mean, that's the first time they did an open world game. They're mostly single player from Killzone. Yeah. Well, let's say mostly Killzone, right?
Yeah.
Is there another big game that they made before Killzone?
Maybe, but it's mostly the Killzone games I know them for. Right?
Yeah, mostly Killzone games. Yeah. So, I mean, they came from a very singular narrative type of game, like Halo-ish with multiplayer. And they went to Horizon Zero Dawn, right? But the thing is, they've always been technologically advanced, even for single player games. They're like always ahead of the curve of what's hot. Well, I'm talking about those. I'm talking about those studios that are like first game out of the gate. They're trying to like revolutionize the way we make environments at the first go with a new team, with all the problems that comes with creating a new studio and a new team. It's like, come on, man, hold on, man. Let's make Limbo or something like easy first. Let's make sure we can make a simple game like that. Those are the problematic studios that are always coming into these new generations with tons of ideas and basically zero experience in execution, right? Always a disaster, never works out. And rarely what No Man's Sky, like a studio like No Man's Sky, like figures it out. But like many, right?
Took them a while to figure it out.
Took them a while, exactly. They became an experienced developer first, and then they were able to promise this open world procedurally generated. That's what I mean, man. That's the step. You got to fuck up a few times first as a team before you get to this revolutionary. And I'm not opposed to it, man. I'm not like. Because the problem, especially an environment artist is facing right now, isn't about their jobs being replaced by outsourcing or any of that. It's really like, hey, you're one guy. Now I expect you to do 10 guys' work, right? And expect the same type of quality, right? That's the problem. This gen, next gen.
Not even the same type of quality. They want better quality.
Better quality, right? Yeah. So that's a fine problem. That means you're super employed if you're tech savvy and you can figure this out and you're adaptable, right? Yeah. I've also seen these type of games go in the opposite direction where they're not asking for bigger teams. They know that's an impossible route. it's not affordable. They're actually gotten smaller. The core team, at least on these AAA games, have gotten to 100-person type, a little bit more. But like they are looking at co-development outsourcing studios to help with the grunt work or procedural generating solutions, right? That's what
or both.
Or both, right?
Yeah.
They're not looking to grow what was a 300 team to 600. They know it's not sustainable. The game, if anything, they haven't announced it to be more than $60. Is it still $60 for PS5, right? Or is it $70? No.
Yep. So it seems like it's going to be $70, right?
That's not much, right? That's not much, anyways. But it should be. So yeah, with those problems, crunching is still being a thing. I think that's what we started off with. The mindset of management is much worse, I think. I think they're more cautious because of bad press. But in reality, I don't think bad press is doing anything to change how they operate. They just have to do a nice tweet or just hold on long enough for the game to come out. Like the only thing Cyberpunk needs to worry about all this crunching is making damn sure the crunching is paying it off like they say it would. Right? The game has to be damn good.
Well, they announced gold. The game has gone gold.
Yeah.
And yes, all eyes are on that game, right? Like it has to come out and knock it out of the park. And
exactly.
Then people forget about the crunching, right?
Yeah, torches and pitchforks will be out if they made all these crunch, get this bad press. It came out and it sucks.
Yeah.
Right?
The only other way to really make a splash and make a change would be for everybody that's going to buy the game to just not buy the game, right? And like we know that's not going to happen, right? So
yeah, I mean, like these roundtable discussions are, I think every few times we would talk about a crunch story, but I'm starting to get tired of talking about it just because of the fact that it doesn't really change anything. People would complain about how it's unright, but like, is the conversation needing to be had anymore? I mean, what's the point? I don't feel like there's a point.
No, I mean, there's some teams out there that are trying to do it the right way and not crunch, properly plan out.
I would go the extra mile and say all teams,
if they have to crunch, they push the date, and I've seen this happen, right? But of course, for some teams, you have publishers, you have limited money. The date is not the date.
Do you know how I know when a new studio is made, dude? When their press release says, hey, we're going to change how we are, how the industry is. We're going to be a studio that does not crunch. We're going to bring in diversity, right? That's a press release of pretty much. That's the press release of every new studio that comes out in the next 5 years, right? And what happens? Time goes, just like CD Red Projekt 1 year later, when crunching needs to be had, suddenly, their what do you call it? A memorandum just thrown out the window. Right?
I'm also not averse to, hey, this week for this milestone, we have to crunch to get this milestone done. We gotta push on this, right? I'm not opposed to that, right? It's when you're like, hey guys,
6-day weeks.
You need to work every Saturday for the next 4 months. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's
for what reason?
That's really bad.
I think this is why there's always like, although it seems pretty one-sided, there is a two-sided argument to this from all levels, right? We keep saying, the big, large teams are always encouraging crunch. If the small teams too, like indie levels, especially, I think even harder, know that they have to make up for their lack of people, and they always crunch.
Well, for that, it's different too, because like they have skin in the game.
Like, they have percentage royalties.
Like that's not just percentage royalties. In some cases, that's their company.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it's all on the line here, and it's only them, and so they're going to overwork. And we know plenty of people that are indie devs that have their own company, and they have all overworked themselves for sure. But now you're overworking it for yourself, right? So
it's a little different.
That's way different than, again, somebody's like, yeah. So what are you doing this weekend? Yeah. No, you're not doing that this weekend. Right. Like that's totally different than like you own that company and you're working to your success.
Right. And I think
and on your project.
Right. I think that attitude still is with the large teams because the owners are saying that, right? The owners, like for these 600 plus teams, are like, hey, the skin is in the game, and if you want your benefits, you want this.
Yeah.
There's a extra layer to that, of course, because they don't, the grunts basically don't own any piece of it. But like, it's hard, man. Unless you're cool with jumping from company to company all the time. Every company kind of runs like this at a certain point, right? So let's say you do jump ship. That ship most likely will reach a same breaking point where a decision has to be made. Are you crunching or not? And I think in a very much same way, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're eventually going to have to come to terms of who you are, who you want to be known as by management. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a way around it. I mean, I was thankful to a certain point where I was cool with the consequences, where like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to get swiped, right? From the bonuses, I'll get swiped from any future promotion if I am looking towards that, which I call a suckered steal, right? If you want that carrot at the end of the stick and I gotta wait 2 years for it, I'm getting my carrot right now by getting a new job, right? I can get that right now, right? I'm never like a guy who invests in someone else's future, right? Like I'll make my own decisions, create my own destiny here. But a lot of people are stuck in that, and I've seen so many people kind of hang up their dreams on the intangibles. It's like, if you crunch, you'll see that bonus. Well, how much bonus? Well, you'll see. It's going to be life-changing.
Yeah, for me, it was never about the bonuses, right? Like, it's really just about doing a good job.
The product. Yeah.
Yeah, and making a good game. And
well, that's easy for you to say. The guy who kind of decides the bonuses for you.
I'm talking before all that nonsense.
Yeah.
It is like, I was young, single, and then I could and I had no friends other than the ones I worked with. So
yeah, it was a hangout.
Work was the fun place to be at, right? Because that's where all your friends are at. And then you're just working on the game together until 2-3 o'clock in the morning. Like, why not? You know what I mean? What else are you going to do? And then, with age, you slowly start, you have family and then you have other things. You're like, oh, okay, well, this seems kind of silly. I don't want to do this. And then also for me, I was having migraines and serious
some health problems. Yeah.
Health problems. And I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't seem very good. Like, this seems pretty stressful. Right. So, right. And then you start reevaluating, like, wait, what are you doing?
Well, help me with this game plan then, right? We obviously know this is going to change. There's only a certain amount of period of your career where you're young and single that you can do this to earn your stripes at the company, right? Mm-hmm. If you were to give advice to people out here, if you were to look at your career, like, all right, you can do this for like 3-4 years, but you better have a game plan at the end of that where you don't have to keep doing that. What would that be to navigate through this industry? Get to an age where you're comfortable. Get to a company that treats you right. Yeah.
My advice is don't crunch for the company and crunch at home on your own stuff.
I see. Side hustling.
Yeah.
It's the only way.
I wouldn't say it's the only way, but that's something that I did. That's something I didn't do. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to crunch and put your health at risk, you better do it for something that's
for your own damn thing.
Yeah. And for your own benefit, for your own learning, that's a good way to go. You know what I mean? So
this is the thing. Yeah. I think I sign off on that. Obviously we are Game Dev Unchained. The podcast is named after that whole lifestyle, but, that exactly, man. I think exactly what you're saying is true. It's like, the guarantees is what I've always had a problem with crunching. It's like, if my boss tomorrow says, hey, this game is going to be number one, you know it, I know it. Right. If you do this much, it will equal this much by this date. guaranteed, right? That's a different story. That is something very tangible. But most bonuses don't work that way.
Yeah, they don't. I think all of them don't. But I would say there's at least 5 or 6 games where if I bust my tail in this game, I'm going to see 6 figures. Like you know that. Like they're just like there's 5 or 6 games. That are that. Yeah. If you're not one of those 5 or 6, well, sucks.
Forget about it.
Right. But for the most part, you work on GTA, the bonuses are gonna be nice. What's the sacrifice? What are you putting up?
What are you willing to put in on the table? Yeah. There's so rarely the case, like you said, those games. And so you're saying 90% of the time it's not worth it. If there's thousands of games each year, there's only 6 games that does that. Yeah. More than 99%.
I'm saying as somebody who is suffering from migraine headaches from working, it's most definitely not worth it.
I have the same problem, dude.
Period. It's just not worth it. Like your health is way more important than some video game. Period. Like, and as much as I love video games, as much as I love the industry, it's not more important than my health.
Yeah, you gotta look at long term.
Yeah, ever. Yeah.
Plus, you, like you said, you want to put. I'm always. I don't know. It's like an egotistical part. Egotistical part. Is that right? The ego side of me, I'll always want to put in work that I can say is rightfully mine. Like more so than just a glorified prop. It's like, hey. Even as a lead, like you really have so little input on a game like freaking Rocksteady, Rocksteady games, but as well as Rockstar games like Red Dead 2, right? You know, it's not, I did this part of Mexico. That's all me. It's like, hey, unless you're Sam Hauser or Dan Hauser, like I don't know anybody else from that game that is worth a damn, even though, you know, they probably did a lot of revolutionary things to it, right? There's in the public eye, there's very little people that's involved in that game where you can say that game wouldn't exist without.
Well, they do that on purpose though, too, right?
Yeah.
Like when it is time to
get all the credit. Yeah.
There's only 2 people to talk to. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Right.
So in that regard, it's not worth it. It's never worth it, man. Like if it's a great game, it's very few that actually share the spotlight with leads of that team, right? It's not our type of industry. Well, any entertainment industry is kind of like that, to be honest. Unless you kind of carve your own road path. But yeah, I mean, it sucks. I'm sure people are going to enjoy the game. Everyone's going to move on. That's just the way things go. But let's go ahead and move on to the next subject. I know we spent a good amount of time and we're almost to the hour mark, but I do want to at least cover Amazon and what's going on over there, right? So I don't know where you were when Amazon was acquiring Twitch. They announced like they're going to go into gaming in a big way. I feel like you were the type that had doubts because, you know, game development's hard, right? I think I felt the same. I think most game developers felt the same. And this is no hate on Double Helix, right? I'm from California. Ooh. But when Double Helix was kind of turned into Amazon, I was like, all right, this is them being serious. This kind of played out the way I thought it would play out. Multiple canceled games, no premier Amazon games that even made a glitch on their own platform, Twitch, which was surprising. It's like, you guys really don't rig your system then if none of your games can hit the top 10 in viewership, right? And they're still keeping on trucking. They're still investing. And out of the blue, they came in with Luna. Which makes sense because they have, you know, cloud servers second to none, right? Are they number one out there when it comes to providing cloud servers with AWS?
They're up there, or yeah, I believe they're number one, and I think Google GCP is number 2. I think.
Okay.
or maybe Azure, Microsoft Azure is number 2.
Well, this is how crazy they are, because I think at one point, if not now, at one point Netflix used AWS or their cloud server for their streaming, right? I don't know if it's the same, still true or not, but that's how big they are. But Luna, ever since they announced this in the past month, haven't heard too much about it. What are your thoughts about this? Is this going to make a dent? Is this something? What was the point of this? Are they bored? All that Prime money just rolling in, they don't know what to do with it.
Well,
why do they keep trying?
I think it's interesting. I think this is interesting because one, you mentioned about Amazon Game Studio, right? They actually did release a game called Crucible.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And then
terrible name for their first flagship title.
And I was, like, hey, they released something, so that's good. That's a good thing. But they just announced that they're actually shutting it down this week. They just announced that they're closing up shop on it. So it's like, okay, so that didn't work out, right?
Of course it didn't.
And maybe they just don't have the expertise in house and the right management to make video games. Like, hey, maybe they don't. So now, what they do have though is infrastructure and internet and bandwidth and all of those things. So jumping onto the streaming chain and train and coming out with a streaming platform makes sense. People that are into streaming are saying streaming is the future for video games. Like, streaming video games is the future. Microsoft is going to be in the space. Sony probably will be as well. We already know Stadia is in the space. Maybe it is the future. Maybe this is the way that you will get your games, or a large portion of the industry will get their games going forward. And so Amazon wants to make sure that they don't miss the boat. So, like, I think, hey, if anybody's going to do it, it will be people with a lot of server infrastructure at their disposal. And so Amazon, Google, Microsoft, that all makes sense, right?
I feel very I feel in this very certain way how kind of when VR came out and it was on a hot streak, everybody and their mom suddenly have a VR set. And it was kind of like to kill the competition by confusing the market. Like, I felt like that was the strategy for a lot of these companies, not to be number one, but to confuse the market where no one becomes number one. And somehow Facebook kind of pulled ahead and finally getting some crazy traction with Quest, right? In the very much same way, like, suddenly everybody has this streaming service for the same games, essentially. And xCloud is the only one that has like a strong enough library and seriousness behind it. You don't think so, man? So, come on, Stadia's ain't shit. PlayStation has a strong library, but they're like 3 months behind any new releases, right? At best, because their release game is so hot. So it's not like a true only streaming device, right?
xCloud is going to be the same way, though, right? xCloud is just going to stream whatever's on Game Pass. And like, Game Pass is a great deal. Like, don't even get me wrong, Game Pass is a good, cheap deal. But the Game Pass library isn't exactly
not great yet, but they have
the most modern and amazing games, right?
No,
they have all the Microsoft first party, but
Microsoft first party day one releases, the EA stuff.
I ain't waking up out of my bed for no Microsoft first
party. Not yet. Release. I mean, they don't have the star power of PlayStation games for sure, right?
Yeah.
But with the EA Pass, EA Play, all the EA games, all the ZeniMax games that's soon going to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
They are a clear leader, at least for streaming. Out of all the streaming services, they are the clear leader of if you're going to get something.
In terms of content and the amount of content, yes.
For the price, too. So Luna, the third weird brother that's coming into this, offers nothing new, right? Their screenshot is showing a game that is available everywhere else. It's like this is a one chance to show what's special about them, and they can't do it.
Well, let's be real for a second, right? Because with the streaming stuff, the one thing that Luna I think is doing right is I think right out the gate, it's working on your phone, right? Yeah. So that's something that Stadia was delayed on. It's like, oh, you want Stadia? You can only use it on your TV or on a laptop. And then people are like,
wrote it out.
This whole play anywhere. Like, why can't I play it on my phone if I can play anywhere, right? So Ludo's like, no, you can play on your phone. And then they partnered with Ubisoft. Mm-hmm. So Ubisoft games are going to be on
Luna
on Luna as well. Like as their own little separate channel.
Are they going to be on Apple devices too? Because xCloud isn't. Amazon has a special relationship with Apple for some reason.
Well, your boy Phil Spencer said something about that this week too, about how xCloud will for sure be on iOS, right? Yeah.
They have to. Yeah. Do you really see Amazon somehow just sticking it out and somehow?
I think all of these things are doing is just proving out the tech. Proving it out, proving out the market, getting their feet out there. Maybe they're not the winner today. Maybe somebody else will come up tomorrow and be the winner. But they're at least staking out and innovating, trying to see what they can do here. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting from the aspect of like, we're talking about these new consoles about to come out and they're all sold out and you had to pre-order them and they're all, $500. Wouldn't it be great if you didn't have to pay the $500?
Dude, I get offers every day to download Stadia and I'm not touching that.
But if you look at it from the perspective of say like the platform holder too, it's like, hey, I don't have to make the consumer hardware, right? I can actually make really good hardware that is scalable in a server blade in the infrastructure that I already have, right? Get economy of scale, and then provide you a service of downloading these games. And then for the gamer, it's super convenient because like boom, 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 you're in the game immediately, no loading, right? There's a lot of good, right? Like I also think, there's a problem of devaluing the value of games and what money is the developers going to get out of this and like what is the deal, right? I think Stadia's business model is good for developers, but it's a terrible business model for the consumers, right? I think Luna is going with a more
they're $10 as well, right? $10 a month.
Well, they're going with more like it's $10 a month. I don't think you have to buy the games. I'm not sure.
$6 a month during its early access.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to buy the games. I think the games are just there, right? So they have to strike these contract deals with the game developers to get them on the service. So their service will probably have less games than say Stadia, maybe, right? Because they have to strike these deals, right? So we'll see. And Microsoft is going to be the clear content winner. Right? Yeah. But I have no idea, like in practice, how well Stadia will do, right?
Stadia is.
We'll see. Sorry, I said I meant xCloud. I have no idea how xCloud will do, but
xCloud will stick with it because it seems like, and they reiterate many times that that's their future. They already know they're second to Sony when it comes to content, and they're doing their best to kind of equal that playing field. But they're more about like quantity at this point than quality.
Yeah,
and that's a fine.
Well, they're going the other way, right? They're going the other
way. They're carving their own path, which is smart.
They're going with variety. They give you a ton of different types of games, tons of different types of experiences. Kids could play, adults could play.
Yeah, they're giving us a
first party. Yeah.
And Sony's fine dining, which is fine. Nintendo's kind of like in their own playground doing whatever they want.
I'll say Nintendo's fine dining as well.
Okay.
But fine dining in terms of gameplay.
Right.
Which is what matters.
Right.
If you ask me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Nintendo will always be there. They're never going to go away. They have such great content. Stadia again. Yeah, I think Amazon's just doing because they have extra cash. It makes sense. It probably doesn't cost them any much more money to kind of free up some computers for running this stupid program, this little pet project, right? They know they need to be a part of this future. Yeah,
it's also a good vehicle for your dev team. It's also a good vehicle for your game engine. It's a good vehicle for Twitch.
Sure.
It's
Amazon confuses me because they are one of the richest companies in the world. And at first, when I thought they were creating a game studio, that game studio would be the most spoiled game studio in the world. But it was the opposite. So we know game devs from that studio, and they're like counting pretzels, and well, it's not that bad, but it's like for cheap, right? And it reflects the master of that company, right? Bezos. He's the cheapest mofo ever.
Right? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I know.
Maybe I'll work at Amazon sometime in the future, so I can't make it.
Well, I'll say this: they are cheap. So prove me wrong, right? Pay me double. But like, I will say this, right? They know they need skin in the game. They will stay as long as they need to. Like all the industries they're a part of, right? They have enough cash to stick around. And I don't even think they have a clear strategy of when to really take over and try to be number one. They're just going to let whatever industry they're in, let's say the game industry and now cloud streaming, kind of eat itself up, right? And just have very much the same way that Apple is kind of, they stole their model from Amazon, trying to roll up all-in-one subscription, right? They're just bettering Prime, right? So to them is a great additional service for their Prime subscriber to one day maybe even up Prime subscription, right? That's their number one driver. So it's a fine strategy. They'll make money in that way. They're not really looking at it to compete to be number one, whatever, right? Even with Twitch, that is the number one streaming that by far still, but getting somewhat competitive. They bought that, right? They didn't become that. So Stadia is just, I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing that 5 years from now we're still talking about Stadia because they don't even provide updates. Like, they don't care. Like, this is a pandemic year. This is where everyone's at home and looking towards the game industry or any other entertainment streaming services to kill their time. And they haven't released shit. Nothing buzzworthy, nothing data worthy. Like, this is the time they should be killing it right now, right?
They've done some Stadia Connects or whatever you want to call it. Like, they've done some updates, some video updates, right? But they have not really moved the needle. I agree. I do think that they're holding some cards close to their chest. I do think that they're holding some stuff in, and then they want to come and make a big splash with whatever the next thing is. And then after that big splash, if it flops, it's a wrap, right? That's what I think is the current situation.
Well, the next big announcement might be their last, is what you're saying. It's a hit it or miss it. I agree, man. Holding their chest,
and I would say that with the announcement of Luna, they're not really see that as competition. They more see it as
a curiosity,
validation.
That's the future.
Yes,
but they're. I don't know, man. Amazon and Google is in the same camp, even though they have a lot of your friends over there from the Ubisoft camp. Like legit game developers, I still put them in the category of tech people trying to make games and they don't understand.
Well, I think that's Google. Like, you're describing Google, right? But I think that's why they hire those people, right? Because they're like, hey, we don't know what the hell's going on with video games, but y'all do. So let's y'all need to solve.
But that's why I put Google and Amazon the same thing, right? Because they try to hire. You all know what this industry is about, but all I'm hearing from the other side is like, we really don't know what's going on. Because all the announcements, Amazon's been making games for 5 years. right?
More than that. It's been more than that.
7-8 years now from their first time they acquired these studios and after Twitch, right?
Yeah, maybe look it up.
Yeah, you look it up, but dude, like that's a Red Dead Redemption release.
Dude, it's been 8 years.
8 years, dude, is a long time to have nothing to show.
Yeah.
Right. I would say
I'll say this. Like, they've shipped some games. I'm actually looking at the games they shipped. They've shipped some games. Like, you don't care. I'm going to name them, and you're like, what? I don't know. The only one that is probably the one that we do know is the Grand Tour game that was released in 2019.
Grand Tour,
you know the Grand. Man. You remember the Grand Tour, the British car show. They made a game. They made a game based on that.
Well, I'm in
Crucible. Crucible shipped this year.
Oh my god.
Got canceled. And then New World is about to come out next year.
Just stop, guys. Like, there's a certain point where if you're just hiring these dudes for charity, I'm thankful, you have all our game developer friends still having jobs and benefits. But like, at a certain point, it's like, be responsible and let these guys have something on their resume worth putting on and have a chance.
I'll say this: making any video game is a feat.
Yeah.
Getting any game out is something worthy of. It's an accomplishment. It's worthy to be on your resume because it will get you another job, no matter how crappy that game is. You're like, hey, I made a video game. That will get you a job somewhere. Mm-hmm. Maybe it doesn't get you a job at Naughty Dog, but it gets you a job somewhere that will then get you a job at Naughty Dog. Maybe, right? Like, so that's how.
All right, man. That's fine. That's a very optimistic. That's a very optimistic to get through a crappy game. I definitely highly suggest. I've seen people like that. I've seen people go through that. Yeah, they have a lot of crappy games under their resume to no fault of their own.
I've been there. I've worked on crappy games, man. I've been
to get to the next step.
Yeah.
It sucks, and I'm sorry. Amazon and Google employees, I wish you guys the best, but with 8 years and with Google Stadia, 3-4 years now, you got nothing to show. And I'm just gonna have to agree that management doesn't know what they're doing, or not paying attention to what the industry is happening.
But you also know making video games takes a long time. So
yeah, man, it's a long time to amount to nothing. Dude, nothing's worse than building a mountain and looking back, it's like, that's a crappy mountain, right? It's it's just the most burnout destroying thing for a game developer. And I just feel like, hey, if you're gonna waste your time, waste it toward, like, I'd much rather you crunch on Cyberpunk, right? This is where the argument is. If there's two sides to the coin and you're gonna crunch on something, at least crunch on something that's gonna be celebrated somehow, if you have that choice. All right. And I think people choose convenience. And at some point it kind of bites them in the butt. Like it kind of hurts them in a way, because I imagine, and I'll end it with this, right? Amazon and Google, all these guys went over there, and I will say this, through comfort first. It's not like, wow, Google has this tremendous reputation to put out quality products and sticking with it, right? That's not Google or Amazon.
I think Google has a reputation of making really high quality things that people want to use, and then when they cancel them, that's why people get upset that the thing got canceled, because it was good, right? So but they do have a reputation of canceling things that people use.
Exactly.
That's what I would say is definitely what they do.
All right. And the same thing with Amazon, right? So there's a reputation where it's more about the money and comfort, which is a fine place to kind of, if you're like burnt enough where you're like, hey, I'm just looking for a place to kind of plant my flag for the next 5 years for me and my family for some stability, I celebrate that. That's cool. But let's be real, right? That's what you're there for. And that's completely fine. But, at some point, I think I think I'm only saying this because I know a game developer, if you're a true game developer, a part of you yourself is always going to be at pain going to work, knowing that this is not a great game. And that kind of kills the creativity a bit, I think. And that I feel like brings down the industry a bit because it kills a lot of creative people spirit who's just done with it and just trying to see the end of the day. Right. And it pains me.
At the end of the day, the industry, the best games in the industry are only like the top
6,
4, 5% of the industry, maybe if that.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are not the top.
Yeah.
But you still are making them because like maybe you could carve out your niche. Yeah. Maybe you could carve out your market. Maybe you can just be successful doing the thing that you love to do, right? So I like I said, I've been there, man. I've worked on some bad games where I'm like, I know this game would be bad, and I think you were even in the studio at the time.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm speaking from truth here. Yeah,
where I'm like, oh man, this game would be bad, and then I like bounced, like got out of there, right?
That's what I mean. I respect that.
Some people don't have that option though sometimes. And then I've also worked on bad games that were just bad and they shipped and they were bad.
Yeah.
And I knew they were bad, you know, but then also I learned a lot in that process. Right. So it's like, what do I get out of it?
Yeah.
So, you know, matters too. Right.
Well, let's end it with this. What's your prediction here? You kind of put out a very interesting point where Stadia is building up to a grand announcement and it's a make it or break it moment for them, because I really do think they don't have any more chances after next bust. I don't think Google has that much patience anymore. Not seeing anything.
Yeah, I don't know if Google has patience or if Google's willing, how much money Google's willing to lose on the thing.
Yeah.
But I just know, like, I just feel that they have something like, okay, here it is with all the features that they've promised. Here's an example of why this thing is cool. I think it does have a lot of cool features. They just have to show it in a game that people want to play, and then maybe they could turn it around. But I'm just not sure.
I'm going to say I'm sure it won't be good. You can't just come up with a Red Dead 2. There's a track record that kind of led up to it, and they need a Red Dead 2 equivalent to be great.
I don't know if they need that first. Like, they just need a good game first, man. They need a good game that they made internally that shows off why Stadia is a good platform to play games on. That's what they need. Like Red Dead, man. Like, you know how much people worked on Red Dead, man. You know how long it takes to make. They just need to make a good game first.
This is the frustrating part, and I know I keep saying I'm, and I know you're tired, right? This is the frustrating part about game development. I really do feel in any type of creativity, somehow there needs to be that danger of accountability, of losing your job, that pressure to somehow come out on the other end with something great. I don't know any games that was made through comfort and just plain love and great benefits. You know what I mean? I don't know any game that's actually been made like that. And so that makes that argument kind of hard. And I feel like Google and Amazon, even though Amazon's super cheap, those tech guys are so comfortable. And this kind of goes with Facebook too. Facebook as a product has dwindled as in quality, because all you hear about Facebook employees is that it's a freaking zoo and gym. Like, it's a playground for adults. Like, how are you going to get anything done if you're at the buffet all day, right? So there needs to be some kind of danger and pressure for creativity to kind of thrive. And I don't feel like any of these tech companies can have proven that. Any of these well-fed developers have pumped out a good product without pressure.
I would say this, like, all these tech companies may have all these creature comforts like that. Yeah. But I, in my experience, I see most tech people don't even partake in those creature comforts for the most part. They'll partake in the food for sure. Yeah. But they won't partake in all the other nonsense for the most part, or because it's about the work. But I do believe they are not subject to the same deadlines and the pressures.
Do you think that plays a factor in a great game, though? or is it completely a myth?
I think a deadline allows you to concentrate your efforts, right? Because if you never had a deadline, you don't need to concentrate your efforts.
Yeah.
And so deadlines and time constraints help crystallize the idea faster, because you can't mess around. You have a limited amount of time.
It's a focus.
Yeah. And so I think that helps in making a good game, because you have some sort of deadline. But then also the great games that we talk about have the luxury of having money where they can take even longer to make a great game, right? So they have even more time to really, and I think the more time that we're talking about here is just more about polish and putting more things in rather than crystallizing up the idea. Like, they get the idea down, it's like, okay, now we have to just make a ton of content and polish the hell out of it. And so you need time for that always. So that's my thoughts on it. Like, I've worked at a tech company before. I work at a tech company now, I could say. But I know the pressures of game development, right? And I think if there's too much pressure, you don't make anything good, because there's just too much pressure.
Yeah.
But having a deadline.
So what I do is I'll spring this on you and make this personal for me first and personal for you.
Yeah.
There's a 21-year-old Brandon that I compare myself to, where that guy will go to the end of the earth to push out the product, versus now where I know kind of the limits of the earth. And there is a wisdom that comes with it for sure. And I am a better artist now than before, but there is some kind of hunger driven quality there that I feel that creatively that version will beat me in terms of from start to finish, right? There's something there. And I feel like maybe if you can kind of share that insight, because I feel like 21-year-old Ray's super hungry and stuff. There's a limping quality to that, where in the same time period,
I think the hunger,
the product is crazy.
I think the hunger is what makes you do what you do, right?
Crazier things, yeah.
And you're gonna go and push yourself harder because you're hungry for it. I'm not saying that I'm not hungry for it now, right? But
you have other comforts.
I'm hungry for different things now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But definitely. Like all this talk that we're having here, myself when I was 21. When I was 21, you kidding? Like, I was still in school when I was 21, right? Like, and I was all nighters, like no problem, all the time, because that's what you do.
That was what was life. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Well, I'll we're well past the hour mark. I want to thank you again. We made this all about crunch, but it is a thing that at some point, man, I need to sit down and write an essay about, because I don't know where I am with that. Yeah. Because as a creative, I feel like it is necessary as part of the secret sauce of game development. And I just need to do some homework about, are there games out there that actually required no crunch but became game of the year, right? Can't think of any.
I wouldn't say game of the year,
but one of the great games of all time.
I do think there's some games out there that are really good that have not been made with crunch. Some people talk about it on Twitter and stuff, and like, oh, the game I made, we didn't crunch, and this is what we did, and it's a pretty cool game.
But that's not a pretty cool game.
Most of those cases are not a game of 900 people working on a big open world game. Like, I'm looking at that. It's just not going to happen.
All right. So, the Lakers just won, right?
Yeah.
And I'm dragging this longer, but I just want to say Kobe, LeBron, any great sport athletes are not just doing enough to become who they are. Like, I just can't think of any greatness that does the bare minimum hours a week of an athlete or a game developer. And
here's my argument. Here's my argument against that.
Yeah.
Pick one of the scrubbiest NBA players that you could think of. That dude would embarrass the hell out of you, right? NBA
But that's
players,
not great. This is better than average.
no, not better than average. You are far from average basketball player. Like you are far below average. Right?
Oh man.
No, let's just be real, right?
Yeah,
And then NBA players are all
above that. Yeah.
Superstars. Like they're all superstars for basketball because they got to the NBA, right? Yeah. And so then when you think of the gap between the scrubbiest of basketball players and like LeBron James and Michael and Magic and some of it is also, those guys are also genetic freaks.
Okay.
Right. So that definitely plays into it, right? That allows them
to be
to focus on the craft and be above the others. So some of them rolled the genetic lottery.
Nice. Lottery.
Yeah. It doesn't mean they didn't work hard. Of course they worked hard. Right. But they also got some genetic help to make them freaks of nature. Right. And they also, some of them have mentality that helps them push through some of the pressures. Right. But I would never say that some other basketball player who's not Michael Jordan was just some scrub who's not trying hard.
Yeah. Right.
Like all those guys are trying very hard.
Right. Yeah. I guess that makes sense. Like the hard work does play a factor, but then that doesn't take away from people who are not great that does hard work as well. They just don't have that extra element to it. I think
it's possible, but we just hear
the bad.
The success stories are always about somebody crunching and putting in the extra work, and we don't hear about the people that are like, oh yeah, we didn't crunch and we made a great game.
Well, you know what, Ray? I'm going to start in changing that trend. I'm going to do average amount of hours each week. Average amount of work, and then when my game is out, it's going to be above par, and I'll be able to kind of
call out on Twitter and see what responses you get. I'm sure there has to be somebody out there. I do remember seeing it, but I just can't remember what games it was.
That means it didn't exist, dude. You're just dreaming. Well, I want to thank you for your time, man. And this is I will do some homework. I'm going to look at some games because it's time to kind of change the narrative of this. I'm tired of seeing Jason, even though I love his expose articles, it's just getting tiring. Seeing how the industry hasn't changed, and
I'll say this: like he ain't doing an expose on some other companies that are crunching that nobody's ever heard of. Why? Because nobody's ever heard of them and won't get the clicks. Like he's focusing on the games that he knows
the big ones
will suck the oxygen out of the room, will elevate his position. People will click on the link.
I know.
I think, know what this is.
Right. I know. That's true. I mean, it's self-promotional for sure.
Yeah.
And I hope by the end of the last Game Dev Unchained episode, I'll have this answer for the industry where there is somewhat of a formula where you don't have to crunch, where you don't have to do all this crazy stuff that seems to be part of the formula. Hard work doesn't also mean overtime, right? Hard work can be just 8 hours of hard work. And I just want to find, because I'm always in the middle of this, I can't definitively say just do your 8 hours and your game's going to be great, because we all know at the 11th hour there's just some things you just got to put in, and you're just going to have to push your team to do it. Otherwise you might get canceled, right?
Yep.
I don't know any other way to say it.
Yeah, I'll say on when I worked on Splinter Cell, that was the least amount of crunch I've ever did. And like it ain't no Grand Theft Auto or no Red Dead Redemption or no Last of Us, but it's a damn good game, you know.
Yeah.
And we put work in, worked hard, but I also didn't crunch like I crunched on some games that are truly horrible. Right. So take that for what you will.
Okay. It just makes me sound, you left at 5, you told your team to work harder, and then you saw them the next morning when you came in. Okay, that's how I got it. All right, guys. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you, Ray. As always, you can find him with his Twitter handle at Wadarass, right? And
WADARASS.
Feel free to tag him, argue with him, switch some points with him. He's always there and on tweeting. And see you guys next month for the next roundtable, but also next Tuesday for the next Game Dev Unchained episode. Thanks, y'all.